Okay, we're back another day. Today's goal is to snatch this carburetor. Now, a big pertaining reason as to what is wrong with this particular engine is, I think the carb is running. So we're going to take off the carburetor and rejet it to a higher jet. Step one, I'm going to try and get this camera to focus, is you see this screw right here. We're in a confined area. Don't particularly want to take everything off. We're going to try our best to rotate this screw. Now you want to use a really good screwdriver because these like to strip out, and when they do, it's not fun getting them out. So just these little half turns. These little half turns here. Kind of hard to do this one-handed. Focus in there. And what this is the clamp on your carburetor. And this carburetor is basically a rebrand of a CVK. And CVKs are actually pretty good. I don't really like slides. I like simplicity. Alright, we're gonna try to wiggle this thing off. I'm gonna need 2 hands for this. Alright, we got most of the carb out. And this is going to be your 150, I think it's a 24 mil, I'm not sure, carb. And I do want to iterate this. Before you go taking it off, as you can see, we've had fuel leak out. This here is your bowl drain. You're going to want to take this off or you're going to have gas pouring everywhere. I don't do it, simply because I couldn't reach it and gas is already everywhere. So next, you're going to want to take this fuel line off. And then over here, you can't really see it, but you're going to have a cable that runs up to your throttle. You're going to want to take that off. And then you're going to have a wiring connection right here. This is going to run up into your wiring loom. Mine's already cut off, so we don't have to worry about that. So, yeah, I'm going to get this thing disconnected the rest of the way, and then I'll just hop right back to you. Alright, next, there's this cable I was talking about. And I don't know exactly the size, but I know a crescent wrench will definitely get that loose. And also, this stuff in the corner down here, at the very bottom corner, that's why you empty the bowl. But mine will not come out, so yeah, hang on a minute. I want to take this boot here off. Now, typically yours are not going to be this easy to remove. Like here. This carb's just been on and off about 9 times. Now, your nut might be like mine, and it will be kind of hard to remove. That's normal, apparently. I want a car with a very bad exhaust. Let me get a nut on the, or a wrench on this, and we'll get right back to you. It looks cockeyed, but apparently that's not. But anyways, let me get back to you. Alrighty, it's off. This is how you want it to look. You should just be able to pull this back. And then you're going to cross this little notch right here. Boom. You just took that off. Now, I'm going to try and do this one-handed. And there with the carb, as you can see. And big issue with this one that I've had, also I do want to iterate more times than one, is these screws right here. These are JDM screws. These are like it on the carb when I got it. There's going to be a small little dot on these screws right here. These screwdrivers, yeah, just toss that away. It will strip these screws. I cannot iterate enough. And when they strip, well, you're going to be ripping your hair out because, yeah, they won't come out. It's a very specific screwdriver tip depth. So you're going to either want I think it's called a JDM screwdriver. I said to heck with that BS, and I took a hand saw, and I cut a flathead into these right here. So, yeah. It was a very interesting battle. You could probably do the same thing if your screws are oriented at the right position to get them out. I would not recommend reusing them. They will break. They will get stuck. Replace them with the correct hardware. I'm pretty sure you could actually find these screws at the hardware store. I'm not sure their depth, but I have replaced them before. So yeah, your local Ace, Home Depot, that sort of stuff. Just be very careful on the aluminum threads. Rechase your threads, put in a new screw. Yeah. And you could drill these all the way out and put a longer screw in a nut, but I've actually had trouble with this, so yeah. Anyways, today is mostly just going to be removing the carburetor. I'm still kind of debating if I should try to properly tune an already going engine, but for those interested and wondering how to tune one of these, since it's not a thing anymore, I can actually show you. This is your idle speed. So what happens is you'll start your scooter and it'll go pump, 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 pump. Won't want to run right. So sometimes what that could be is you could do a little test on your throttle. You open your throttle up just a little bit, just a smidge. And what that's going to do, yes, speed through a 20-mile-per-hour zone, going 50. That was smart. But what you're going to want to do is when you crack that open, you're actually opening these blades down here, and it gives it a little bit more air. Now these engines, what they require is they require air and fuel to ignite your airflow mixture. Hence how the engine goes bum, 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 and makes fun sounds. So give it a little throttle on this type of engine. If it runs better and wants to stay idling while you have it cracked open, and if you go to let off and it wants to stumble and die, this is what you tinker with right here. You're gonna take your screwdriver right here, and you're not gonna want to tighten it like I am, but you're gonna want to go like a half a turn. Half a turn, try and start it. If it still won't idle right, give it another half a turn. Still didn't idle right? Okay. Give it another half a turn. And you can probably notice them throttle blades are open a little bit more to let more air in. So, you're going to want to adjust it until you can feel it in the scooter. It'll feel smoother. It won't be all shaken and all that. It'll be smooth. And you could also hear it in the idle. It'll start missing. It'll start popping and all that. You don't want that. You want it to run nice, smooth, and true. And I don't really have a running engine to show this to you on, but this is your fuel. And I come from the world of older carburetors, but this is the most simplest thing. You really want a flathead. To turn it in gives it less fuel, turn it out gives it more fuel. If you've done the previous and it actually gets worse when you give it more air or give it a little more throttle, then that typically means you need more fuel. Whether that be in a fuel mix, whether that be your lines are clogged or your tank is clogged, it needs fuel to ignite, right? So what you're going to want to do when you're starting with the carburetor is turn this out another half a turn. Did it get better? If it got better, then it needs more fuel. If this thing is typically more than 2 or 3 turns out, your idle jet's too small. And I'll be doing more on jetting and all that in a minute. So let me pull out my flathead and see if I have to cuss at this thing. Alright, I finally found my screwdriver scoliosis. Yeah, don't ask how that happened. The stator removal took a lot out of me. But see, this is what I was talking about, cutting a flathead into these screws. Now I can actually properly mount a flathead in. Pro tip. Alrighty, so now that our scoliosis screwdriver's gotten our screws out, now we can take off the bowl. I do want to iterate, you want to be careful taking this off. You don't want to warp it, you don't want to damage it. Definitely do not smack it with a hammer, as I may or may not have done numerous times. Make sure all the screws are out. There should be 4 screws in total with a stock GY6 carb. So, now that we've opened it up, now we get to the innards of this. So a couple of carburetor issues I first started having, and I spent countless and countless dollars of remedying, was a carburetor would overflow and it would puke a big puddle on the ground when I left it unattended, or if I left it running, it would pour out the front right here, and you don't want that. And what is happening is your carburetor won't shut the gas off. Now what the hell do you mean by that? Well, let me tell you. So to any newbies out there, this is called your needle and seat right here, that little bronze thing right there. This is called your float. Kind of works like your toilet in your house, if you understand that. So what happens is this hangs open. As fuel gets in, it closes and closes, stops right here. The fuel will hold that needle shut, and it won't let any more fuel in. What can happen if you've had a carburetor sitting for a little while on your bike, and if you've let it sit for a couple months or heck even a couple decades, is that this here will stick. It won't let any fuel in. So if you're reviving one of these old scooters, yeah, you might have fuel going to the carb, but is it really going into the engine? So when you revive one of these, I always pop one of these off, and that little intake in there, you just spray a little starting fluid or a little 2-stroke gas, because it's got some oil in it. It's pretty good for the cylinders. Pour a little bit of that down that little hole right there, start your engine, and if it runs, well, you got a fuel problem. And you can do the same thing whenever you're at your apartment complex or house, shoot at work, and your scooter just doesn't run. Pop some of this off, drop a little couple drops, I guess, from the locally sourced pump. You don't want to fill it. Just a couple drops will do you. Put it down the yap of that little orifice back there, that little silver clamp thing. Yeah, that's your intake. You want to put a couple drops down that, and if it barks off, then you have a fuel issue. And what happens is this is not opening. Now, it basically just wants to hang up here. No fuel's getting in through that. Now, if it sticks down like that, well, what's going to happen is it's going to fill with fuel, more fuel, more fuel. And through that little bronze opening, you might notice there's a little stopper in there. And that stopper's not stopping fuel. Yeah. And so what happens when you leave the water on in the sink? Well, the water keeps pouring. And it's going to keep pouring and pouring and pouring. And then eventually it's going to work up in here, flood your engine, And eventually it's going to puke out this front right here. Yeah. So if it keeps leaking from right here, yeah, it's just, you just need to adjust this. Now there are two different types to these. You have the foam and metal, or you have a plastic one like this. Plastic ones, they're usually, I've never had a problem with one actually, but you usually want to heat these up gently. You don't want to reignite the fuel in your face. And barely bend it. Because this is brittle plastic. It will break. You're going to want to keep it level about right there. Might see a little line on this float. It's very hard to see in the camera. There's a line right here on the float. And you're going to want to keep it level with that little thing right there, with the base of the carb right here. You're going to want to keep that level. If it's not level, it'll either shut your fuel off too late or too early. So I'll get to that in a minute. Right now, you may have heard me mention earlier about rejetting. So now we get into the real meat and potatoes of carburetors. And you might be looking at this as a new guy and be like, what the heck is this? Well, let an idiot explain it to you. So, this is your idle jet. This is the I don't know how you'd really call it, but this is what controls your idle speed using the fuel. This controls how much fuel is used after your or when you start driving. Yeah, when you start driving. So anything outside of idle speed, this controls. So every time you take off from a stoplight or whatever, this is controlling it. This little guy, well, ignore him. I don't think that really goes to anything. But anyways. So, the size of this jet here matters a lot. If it's too small, then this thing is not getting enough fuel at idle, and you'll have this screw over here adjusted way out. By the way, this screw only controls your fuel at idle mix, I'm pretty sure. If not, I'm sure some guy will let me know down in the comments. But so, this screw controls this little jet right here. So if it's too small, that screw's going to be way out. And you don't want that. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to up a jet. You can buy a kit on Amazon. It's about $10. I always say be careful when you buy these. I always buy the master kit, which is 30 pieces or something like that. Or not 30 pieces, 30 bucks, my bad. And it includes pretty much every jet to these carburetors known to man. But you can't always find the same pilot jet. That's what this is called, your idle or pilot jet. This is called your main jet. And it actually comes in 2 pieces. Yeah. So, if you have too big of a pilot jet, like I've had in the past with this thing, you know, you'll have some black smoke sometimes come out of your exhaust. It becomes really hard to start your idle speed. This little screw right over here, it'll be cranked way the heck down. Yeah. Because it's trying to get more air to displace all of that fuel. Yeah. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go down a jet size. So now let's just say you got one of these and you don't know what jet to use. Well, always start with the biggest jet. And that kind of sounds a little stupid. You know, you might be wondering, well, wouldn't that flood the engine? Yeah, it will. It'll run like crap and all that, but you know that jet's bad. Yeah, so then you're going to go down another size. And it runs a little less like crap, but it's still not what you're looking for. Okay, you're going to go down and down and down. And eventually it's going to run right. And you're going to be like, that's perfect. But don't just stop there. Go down one more size. See what that does. If you start hearing like a pop, 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 or as you try and accelerate and it's popping and it sounds like it's starving for gas or whatever. And this goes to either jet, by the way. Or if it sounds like it doesn't want to run right or your screw's not in the right place, you know, remember 2 to 3 turns out. Well, now you know that one that was perfect earlier, that's the right size. What I kind of sometimes do by accident is I'll be like, this is the perfect jet. And then I'll use it, and it runs like crap later. And I'm like, where did I go wrong? I rejetted it, right? No, I didn't. So take it from mistakes of an idiot. Now this one, I'm pretty sure I know what happened on the main jet now, because that's a very, very tiny jet for this built engine. And by built, I mean stock. But yeah, it's like it looks more like a 90 jet. I could be wrong. We're about to look into it. This is your main jet. You might notice it's a very tiny thing. Let's let that camera zoom in. Yeah, it's way too small of a jet. Now, a lot of these jets, when you're rejetting them, they're going to have a stamp on the side. This one doesn't. This is why you want to replace these. You don't know the size. You don't know how much fuel you're getting. Yeah. Them birds are annoying. Caw-caw! Anyways, as I'm losing my marbles out here, let me explain the main jet while I still have sanity. So, main jet. Believe it or not, what'll happen is when you're sitting at a stoplight, you'll give it some throttle. Well, what happens then? You can't really just roll off of the pilot jet, can you? You're exactly right. You need more fuel, so you jump to a bigger jet. Think of this as like a weird computer or a brain, really. This is old technology, and I mean dating to the very first car. This is why I like them. Simple. So, this thing is saying, okay, we just went from idle, because this thing, remember, this turns. We just went from idle to going at a stop or going at a speed limit. So, this now just tells this to shut off. We're actually going to go over to this jet. And this jet is telling the engine how much fuel it needs as it's driving. Remember, it's only using this to control the air. It's using this to control the fuel. So you have to keep a good air mix of around 14 to 1, I think. I think is what that is. I don't know. I failed physics class. Or whatever that is. So, really, you'll tell by the sound and the feel of the bike. You can easily tell. If it runs really bad, like this engine did, before it overheated and melted everything inside, what will happen is I would sit at an idle. Remember, this was perfect. And I would go to take off, and immediately it wanted to fall on its face. And then it would kind of hang at that like engine tone and go, ngang, ngang. That's too lean. So, too lean means you don't have enough fuel. Too rich means you have too much fuel. Remember, we want to be right in the middle. So, as I was driving, what was happening was this was telling the rest of the carburetor, okay, we need this tiny bit of fuel, but in reality, we needed this much fuel. And so, when I would take off, it would backfire at the thing, and it would just spit and pop. And then this engine was actually burning so hot, I could see like stuff like burnt, like moisture wisping off of it in like 30 seconds. Like right now, it's ice cold. But after driving, I would touch this side, and it would burn the heck out of me. It'd literally leave my hand red. It was like touching a white hot exhaust. And it would not stay idling. It would just spit and pop. It would try to shut off mid-drive. That's burning too lean. That's what you call a soft seize. What is happening is you don't have enough fuel. Well, what happens when you don't have enough fuel is this cylinder will heat up. It'll get not really white hot, but it'll get way hotter than its operating temp. And the piston will go from this to this, and it'll seize up in that cylinder head temporarily. That's what I think a soft seize is called. Now, depending on how you did it, it might not ruin the engine, may not. It's a 50-50. I couldn't tell you until you really looked at it. This one's fixable, believe it or not, but the bearing was kind of going out from the get-go, and I might just replace this whole engine. I have another one being built, so yeah. Anyways, back to topic. So to avoid that, this is why tuning is very, very vital. Don't just simply say, okay, I'll buy a new jetting kit next week. Nope. Just quit driving it until you get a new one. Because if this is your only mode of transportation like it is for me, you're going to be stranded without an engine. Then where are you going to be at? So, yeah, you're going to want to take a flathead, pop this thing out to prevent all that popping, right? And you're going to put in a bigger size. These typically like the 100 range. I typically have noticed up here in my climate, I like to run a 105 to a 110 jet. So, I'm just going to use this as an example. I'll have my reject kit with me right now. You pop that out with a flathead. We're going to pop this jet out. And you're going to see what you're looking at. It's hard to do with one hand. Scoliosis screwdriver. I unlock your power of scoliosis. Man, scoliosis is a rough condition, let me tell you. That's your idle jet. And all that junk right there, and little holes, air flows through that, and it sends fuel out. Well, you can't really do that when you're at main. So you have a giant little tube down in here that has several of them little holes in it. I think it's called a venturi. I'm not quite sure. I'm not a physicist or mechanic or whatever the heck you call them folk. And way down in there, you see that little white dot. That's a needle. You can actually see it through the front of the carb. That's a needle. That needle is how it tells this jet to flow more fuel at what time. Again, it's literally the same principle as this right here. This controls how much fuel goes in and out. It's the same exact thing up in here, but with a needle. Pretty primitive and ingenious, really. So let's say this goes all the way up here. Okay, that just told that, give it full throttle. And all that fuel is metered through this jet right there. So, might be wondering, okay, I get it, what it does. How the heck do I tune it? Oh, remember how I said this one was? The symptoms for running lean are usually the engine runs hotter. It'll start spitting and popping. You'll have performance issues. It will also kind of hang at idle. Now, what does that mean when it hangs? It means you'll twist the throttle and go, and notice when you give it to rev, it hangs when you let off. So it's hanging. A, too dangerous to drive. B, it's not very good for the engine. And what is happening is it's using less fuel, and it's igniting quicker. So yeah, it's trying to get rid of heat and all that stuff. And the popping is, as you're driving, the fuel is literally detonating from the heat. So then now you have detonation. And it'll sound like popcorn sometimes. It'll go pop, 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 pop. Which usually sounds very, very similar to spark knock. But we'll do spark knock in another video. How do you remedy this? Okay. So, what you're gonna want to do is you're gonna want to pop this jet here out, look at it, spit on it, throw it at something, who cares? And you're gonna want to go the next size up. And then run it again, but still doing it. Okay. And you just keep going up and up and up until it sounds beautiful. Remember, 2 to 3 screws out. Usually that screw right there doesn't affect this. That just affects your idle. So, this right here, my little cheat way of doing it is I always start too rich. You might be wondering, but don't you want it perfect? We don't know what perfect is. Remember, the symptoms for running rich kind of destroys this little here engine. We don't want to do that. We want to fix the engine. We don't want to tear it up. So, what we're going to really want to do is we're going to want to start too rich. Now, what does too rich sound like? Well, too rich sounds like Bill Gates, but in all seriousness, it's going to basically put out a plume of black smoke. It's gonna do all sorts of junk. It's gonna want to not even gonna want to take off. It'll just go rum pop pop pop, and it'll just sit there. The engine will die. You can try to rev it, and it goes rum pop 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 pop. It'll sound like it hates you, like the ex-wife. Okay. So, and performance-wise, the performance sucks. However, it will clear up whenever you introduce more air into the system. Yeah, it's kind of shocker, because again, we've upset that fuel-air ratio, so it's trying its best to suck in more air. Yeah. And so how you diagnose it is, again, when you give it more air, does it clear up? If so, then you're running too rich. Sometimes you can run without an airbox. Now, an airbox typically makes you run a little rich. Without an airbox, by logic, you don't have any air restriction. So it's going to run lean. And I think that's what happened with this thing. Was the guy I bought it from, he ripped the airbox off and he told me it was junk. And I drove it, but because of the damn thing being so loud, I couldn't hear anything. Plus, I'm half deaf, so it burned up, the old one. And then I used this one. This is the only constant between my two engines. Everything else was brand new. Now this one burnt up from the same carburetor. This is why tuning them is so important. So, that's why I start these off too rich. And you're going to want to back down, back down, back down. Oh, it's starting to pop. It's starting to sound like it's got a lean bog to it. Whenever I give it throttle, well, we're going to go back up a jet. Perfect. Well, now you just got your perfect speed. So, there is one little thing that I'm forgetting to tell you as far as tuning. You're not done with tuning. No. It's done when it says it's done. It's like Thor and Thor Ragnarok. And I don't mean the movie. I mean the game, the God of War games. Yeah, you remember he hits you and he says, "We ain't done till we say we're done." Yeah, that's this carburetor. That needle in there, you can actually adjust. Well, let me see if I can't get you to see it. You can actually adjust that needle. So what if both of these run good? Really, you're going to want to tune this first and then tune it again. Because let's say you go to take off from a stoplight, and again, it's doing that lean. They go pop, pop, peep, pop, 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 and then it'll run smooth. What's happening is when it's transitioning between that idle jet and that main jet, this right here, that ain't good. What happens is it's now accepting too much air between the changing of those two jets. And you don't want that, because what happens when you have too much air? It runs lean. That's right. The reason why you want to do this needle thing first is you could actually have the perfect jet, and all it needs is this needle redone. You could actually be fighting this needle adjuster. I can't really do that at the moment because this diaphragm's already bad, and I'm trying to make do till I get my new carb in next month. So I will tell you of a good couple of people that make great videos on tuning these carburetors. Like there's a lab called Paul. Rolling Wrench, I do believe, has one of these out. There's a couple of them on YouTube. You know, you just look up GY6 150 carb tuning CVK. Boom. They explain that needle more in depth. Basically, what that needle's doing is it kind of controls how much fuel's going in between going like half throttle, full throttle. You know, well, we better rewrite that. Here, when you go from this to this, what's controlling the fuel now? What controls that? That kind of controls it. So, what you're really telling that needle to do is how much fuel do you want to flow between this idle range and this quarter throttle range right there. That's all you're telling it to do. And this here is pretty much the basics that you need to know. But I'm going to keep tattling on until my battery runs dead. It's already on 12% because I'm an idiot that can't charge his phone. This right here. You might be wondering, Phoenix, why the hell did you cut this? Well, that's because I got irritated and I needed to rip it out. It's springtime here in the OK. So, you don't really need this in the hot weather. But I'm not saying you should cut it off. Don't be an idiot. Do as I say, not as I do. I also wanted to make another connector. Because this is way too long. They made this way too long. This literally bound up in my rear wheel at some point and ripped off my old enrichment. So, this, in the old days, you had a choke. In the wintertime, what would happen is the air would be too cold. The densities and all that would be wrong in the air. And when you go to start your vehicle, it wouldn't start. Technically, you needed more fuel. And so, you could use your hand here to simulate that. And the engine would kind of start up. And as it warmed up, you would slowly uncover your hand. And then it would run right because it's all heated up and it heats the air as it's going on and all that. I hope I'm explaining that correctly. I could be an idiot. Correct me in the comments. So, here's what happens. As you're sitting there, it's wintertime. I don't know why you would drive a two-wheeler in the wintertime. I guess you're an idiot like me. Hey, let's have a beer about it. This right here, what will happen is that same thing, but we don't have that choke. Uh-oh. So, what it will do is, in a problem where you have too much air, what are you going to do? You're going to throw more fuel at it. Your scooter powers this thing on, if I'm not mistaken, which gives it more fuel into this carburetor. In fact, I think that's the jet right there, that little hole. Not the big one, not the frowny face. The little dot right there. Right? Probably in the center of your screens. It sends more fuel into the engine until it warms up. There's a needle in here that's electronically controlled. I know, I hate electronics too. And it's telling how much fuel goes into here. Now, here's the big problem with these. Two, actually. When they fail. So, when they fail, you're going to be sitting there and it does not like to start cold. Yep. It's not going to like to start cold. It's going to be like me in the morning time, you know, and the hot water goes out. You don't like to take a cold shower, do you? But your shower's how you start your morning. What are you going to do? Got to take that extra shot of coffee. And this term, gasoline. It needs some motivation. So, more motivation, not scoliosis thing. Anyways, what happens when this thing goes out is you got to give it more fuel. That's the only way it starts. Odds are, this little puppy here, that thing's broken. The second flaw with this goes in how it's set up, really. There's no reference to tell this thing here that it's running too rich. Like, for example, a lot of modern cars, and I get it, it's a carburetor. Deal with it. Well, the year's 2025, we've been dealing with it since the dawn of the carburetor. I still will not switch to fuel injection because that's for lazies. And I'm lazy, but I'm not that lazy. Anyways, there's nothing telling this wire to shut off. That hooks directly up, at least on my bike, into the accessory drive, which hooks into the stator. So this is always powered, which means it's always getting too much fuel. Now, ironically, maybe that's why we're running lean. This was always on. There's supposed to be something that tells it to shut off, but on mine, it would never shut off. I just couldn't get it to shut off. So I had to do this in order to tune it correctly. By the way, while you're tuning, you're going to want to cut that. Don't cut that, but unplug it. Mine is just wrapped up in 11 rolls of electrical tape. Yeah, that's what I get for being stupid and all that. So, I hope I explained all that. And now that our pin fell out, to those wondering, there's your needle and seat. That little hole right there is where all the fuel goes in. And that right there, let me get the camera to adjust. That is your needle. So, I should have said this earlier, and some of you are probably like, why is this idiot still yapping? This right here, if, let's just say you got your foot set right. You got your needle jets in and all that. You set everything perfect. But it's still puking fuel out the front. Well, you got trash down in that. Take you some carb cleaner. That's why it's called carb cleaner. Spray it down in there. Perfect. Put it back together. If you solve the leak, it won't leak. But if it keeps leaking, well, sometimes the rubber on that needle I just showed you wears out and it leaks everywhere. Remember in one of the videos I said I'm surprised I didn't blow the seals out, leaving that gas on? That's actually your seal, and you can blow that thing out. Yeah. You can blow it out just like your spine after lifting up that one V8 at the salvage yard. Hey, it was a Crown Vic V8, okay? You don't get them that cheap. Anyways. So, let's just say, all right, you're done. No, you're not, bud. No, you're not. Let's get this back in here. Now, ideally, you want to peen these so they don't fall out, but really, I'm going to be honest with you, I've never had one fall out because there's no room for it to fall out. Your leaking problem also could be coming from this gasket. Fun little fact, gasoline hates rubber. Rubber doesn't like gasoline. And both of them are too foolish to get a restraining order to restrain themselves from either one. So they'll fight each other until this gasket wears out, because it's rubber. Gasoline does not like rubber. That damn airplane. Anyways, so what will happen is this gasket will be flat looking. And it's rated for gasoline, but it'll still wear down. Also, clean your bowls. I know mine's a little junky down there. It's hard to clean. Give me some slack. So, when you put this on and you got trash up in there, it's like putting a stick in a sandwich bag and then you try and seal the sandwich bag. It's not gonna seal, bud. Not at all. So, what else are you gonna do? Well, you go online on eBay, you can buy a $7 rebuild kit, or buy a whole new carburetor, if I'm being honest. They're like 20 bucks. Excuse me. They're not that much. You do what you want. It's your money, your carb. But I will iterate this also. Now that you've rejetted and putting your carb back together, ants. Hate ants. We love them, but we hate them. These screws. Scoliosis, your time has come. These screws here are the most useless known to man. I would usually prefer God's tool, the self-tapper. However, one small, tiny little issue with that is, unfortunately, we have to do things the right way. Well, how do you do things the right way? This is aluminum. And I've replaced a good 4 or 5 carbs simply because these were torqued down way too tight in the wrong places. Now, what do you mean by that? Crisscross method. Always tighten in pattern, because what will happen is you'll warp this whole bowl, or even worse, the carburetor, the thing that you just spent an hour rebuilding and tuning and all that. You would have bent it, and you're going to be in here a lot. I always tighten in a crisscross method, because aluminum likes to bend and stretch and shrink. It does not like to go back to its original position. So, always crisscross. Now, when I'm saying this, you might notice I'm kind of going willy-nilly all over the place. Well, that's because I'm not tightening it up yet. When you tighten it up, crisscross. So, here to here and here to here, back over to here, 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 here. And then I kind of go around in a square, and then I'll go here, 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 one last time. And I've never had one leak, so yeah. That's carburetors kind of made simple by an idiot to the best of my abilities. I will be going in this later to explain exactly what the diaphragm does. The diaphragm is kind of complicated to some of you, and kind of complicated to me too, if I'm being honest. But I really hope that me yapping for almost a full hour has made life simple for you. And tell me what you think, and hopefully it's helped you. So with that one, I'm going to tell you, have a good one.